Hello, gathered friends, I'm Perora Nuva, and welcome to BIONICLE Deep Dive, where we analyze the tropes, characters, and lore of LEGO BIONICLE. In this video, I wanted to explore the three virtues of the Matoran, their meanings, their significance to the plot, and what they say about both Matoran culture and BIONICLE's messages. We will also discuss the various fan interpretations, opinions, and debates about the three virtues. Let's dive right into it. In Bionicle, the three virtues of unity, duty, and destiny can roughly be summarized as working together, responsibility, and fulfilling a higher purpose. These virtues are cornerstones of Matoran life, philosophy, and culture, and are basically the central tenets of their moral ideology. Moreover, there's an argument that, out of universe, these three virtues are some of the major lessons that LEGO was trying to communicate to its audience with the Bionicle story. One very interesting thing I found while researching this video is that, despite being so central to the themes of Bionicle, the concept of the three virtues doesn't actually appear in the story until the third story year, with the Borak Kal and the Mask of Light movie. While the three virtues feature heavily in the books Tale of the Toa and Beware the Borak, those books were actually published in 2003 to serve as recaps to the 2001 and 2002 story years in preparation for the movie. None of the media that actually premiered in the first 2 years explicitly referenced the three virtues. Now, that's not to say that those themes weren't present in the story. Unity, duty, and destiny as separate individual concepts were heavily featured from the start. But they were featured alongside other moral concepts, and it wasn't until 2003 that they were specifically codified as the three virtues moral system. When you realize that the three virtues were only introduced in 2003, it becomes insanely apparent how hard they pushed this concept all at once, as not only did the concept of the three central virtues first appear in 2003, but also the six principles explored in the Motunui online game too. The six principles were an additional set of values derived from the three virtues that each village developed based on their own cultural views. Now, originally I was also going to dive into the six principles in this video, and I will discuss them somewhat when relevant, but I ended up having so much to say about them that I realized it deserves its own video, if for nothing else than to keep this video focused since it's already pretty hefty. The first movie, Mask of Light, has the three virtues as one of the central themes of the film, with the three main characters each embodying one of them. Hali is unity, represented by her bringing the island together near the climax of the story. Jalar is duty, embodying responsibility, courage, and a willingness to do what is right even when it's hard. And Takua represents destiny, in that his story is about accepting his true role, self-actualization, and working towards a higher purpose. Now, the three virtues are some of the most discussed and debated topics in the fandom, with fans having a very wide variety of opinions and interpretations of them. Destiny in particular is the subject of massive amounts of debate on how it actually works in universe, due to destiny being treated as both a virtue to live by and a vague cosmic force that shapes the lives of the characters and the universe as a whole. The discussion on destiny as a wider concept, both in-universe and narratively, also deserves its own video, which will be coming out sometime after this one. So, for the purposes of this discussion, I'm going to make a distinction between destiny as a virtue and destiny as a cosmic force. When I say destiny as a virtue, I'm talking about destiny as a moral ideal that the Matoran try to follow. On the other hand, when I talk about destiny as a cosmic force, I mean how the guiding hand of destiny seems to shape the Bionicle universe and the lives of the characters beyond just how the Matoran think of it. This includes discussing whether or not destiny is inevitable, is destiny assigned by Motunui or the Great Beings or something beyond them, and whether or not free will exists in Bionicle. All that falls under the cosmic destiny umbrella that will be discussed later. So for now, in this video, we're just going to look at how the Matoran treat destiny as a moral and cultural concept, even though both ideas are closely intertwined. So, now that we've got that clarification out of the way, let's look at the virtues more closely, and add examples from the story to see more precisely what their meanings and significance are. In universe, the origin of the three virtues is that they were gifted to the Matoran by Motunui, who in turn got them from the Great Beings. According to Matoran mythology, before the coming of the Great Spirit in the early days of the universe, the Matoran labored in darkness, not knowing what they were doing or why. They were separate and without purpose. However, when the Great Spirit arrived, he brought the Matoran together and gave them purpose by illuminating them with the three virtues. So we see that right from the start, the Matoran believe the virtues give purpose to their lives and the work that they do, and that they are grateful for these things. Starting off with unity. Unity is the virtue of working together to solve common problems and creating harmony among people who are different from each other. The problems that the characters face are greater than what any of them can do on their own, but they find that when they work together, they can do anything. One aspect of Unity that I find very cool is how much it is emphasized that Unity is about bringing together people who are very different and embracing those differences because everyone has something to bring to the table. It is often said that Unity is the true source of the Toa's power and their ability to do great things. It is the power of unity, of working together, that gives them the strength to do their duty and achieve their destiny. Nork once implied that the placement of unity at the start of the saying was significant, stating, "Unity, duty, destiny. It starts with unity. If you, Toa, are to rescue the Matoran, you must do so together," telling Vakama that the other virtues and the Toa's other goals cannot be achieved if they do not start with unity. Unity is often one of the virtues that the Toa struggle the most with, particularly the Toa Nuva and the Toa Metru. With the Toa Nuva, it took them a while to even accept that they should work as a team at all, and even fully dissolve the team at one point. It was hard for them because each of them was a leader within their own village. Having to work with others and therefore having to compromise and consider other ways of thinking and solving problems didn't come naturally to them. The Toa Metru had a slightly easier time since, at the very least, they all accepted from the start that Toa should work as a team, but they bickered constantly, and it took them a long time to become coordinated. Now, unity is strongly associated with the element of water, and it's most often that the Toa of water in a team are the ones who place the most emphasis on coming together, and many times act as the glue that keeps their teammates united. When fulfilled to its highest extent, unity also manifests as literal additional powers that the characters gain from working together. The first is fusion, where the characters have the ability to combine their bodies and mind to form a new entity. Examples featured in the story include the Toa Kaita, where 3 Toa become 1, and the Matoran Nui, where 6 Matoran become 1. These types of fusions occur when the beings involved focus on their unity and devotion to a common goal. Emphasizing how unity is about diversity, for these fusions, each fusee must be of a different element. As their wills meld together, so do their bodies, producing a being far more powerful and far wiser than any individual. While several other types of fusion exist in the story, I'm not counting the ones that are involuntary, like from the Spear of Fusion or Energized Protodermis, since that's usually from an outside power and not from their unity. Several of the Toamata showed hesitation in forming the Kaita, since they were worried it would mean letting go of their autonomy and independence. However, they could not deny the exhilarating feeling of their combined power and intelligence. The fusions are able to wield the combined powers of each of their component parts, and in addition, they also have the combined personalities and intelligences of the fusees, allowing them to build upon all the strengths and strategies of their parts. One example is Toa Kaita Werua's wisdom, being from the combination of Kopaka's careful, logical mind, Gali's instincts and emotional intelligence, and Liwa's fast, impulsive, yet intuitive thinking style. The Matoran Nui, the other prominent willing fusion, gains an almost transcendent wisdom and understanding, as well as physical strength, speed, and durability greater than even a Toa. The components of the Matoran Nui in the Metru Nui arc admitted a sense of exhilaration after coming apart from the fusion, except for Akmu, who was disgusted at his individuality being compromised. Another physical manifestation of the power of unity is the Toa Seal, which formed an indestructible barrier of pure protodermis when 6 Toa of different elements combined their powers at the same time. The Toa Seal was perhaps the ultimate manifestation of the Toa's combined power, as only they could undo it, and anyone else who even attempted to break the seal would fail, and in some cases nearly die, showing the overwhelming power of Toa who are united. Duty is the virtue of responsibility. It's about doing one's job, being accountable, and putting others before yourself. Of the virtues, it can be argued that duty is the one that the Toa teams we see in story have the easiest time with, as they all understand that their duty is to protect the Matoran. For the Matoran themselves, duty can take the form of many things. Often, duty is referenced as diligence to their jobs, extremely important, especially on Metronui and inside the Matoran universe, where their work kept Motunui functioning. Though duty also manifests as an obligation to look after and protect their fellow Matoran. Particularly on Motunui, Voyanui, and Marinui, the Matoran on those islands developed strong bonds of trust and obligation to each other, and believed it was their duty to help their community. Duty is often associated with courage and sacrifice, as it means doing what's right despite fear and putting others before yourself. No character in Bionicle embodied duty more explicitly than Jaller, who was noted for being among the bravest and most responsible Matoran on Motunui. He took his job as captain of the Takoro Guard very seriously, and when he gave his life to save Takua, he stated he did so because it was his duty. Duty is perhaps the most mundane and grounded of the three, as unlike the other two, there's no additional powers or cosmic mysticism associated with it. But in a way, that's kind of fitting. Duty isn't glamorous or flashy. It's about putting in the hard work day to day and choosing to do what's right, even if it's difficult or scary. Doing one's duty isn't about what they get out of it, and giving a cool reward for it kind of defeats the purpose. And by having this distinctly unglamorous virtue, it works to make sure that those who follow the three virtues are not in it solely for glory or power. The third and most mysterious of the virtues is destiny. Destiny is the virtue of purpose, of achieving a grand life goal, and understanding one's place in the greater cosmos. Destiny is strongly linked to transformation in the story, which I believe points to destiny being about self-actualization. Matoran who are transformed into Toa are often said to have been called by destiny, and that the transformation is only possible if that Matoran was destined to be a Toa. So it's almost about becoming who you were meant to be. Destiny is of particular importance to Toa, and it is believed that every Toa is given their power for a specific purpose, the destiny that they were meant to achieve. This is particularly true of the three main Toa teams we see in story, as each of them had a distinct ultimate mission that they were meant to accomplish as Toa. Finding and accomplishing their destiny is the overarching goal of each of the heroes in the story. For the Toa Mata, it was reawakening the Great Spirit. For the Toa Metru, it was saving the Matoran of Metronui, and for the Toa Inika, it was saving Motunui's life. Fulfilling their destiny is the ultimate goal of a Toa, after which they're actually allowed to essentially retire. If they have fulfilled their destiny, a Toa can fully relinquish their power and retire from heroics to live life as a Turaga. And I think that this is one of the reasons why Turaga are so honored in Matoran society. In addition to them being former Toa and having the wisdom they gained from their adventures, being a Turaga at all is a undeniable physical indication that this person has fulfilled their destiny. They are quite literally a walking embodiment of virtue, and so are honored for what they did. Destiny is also linked to transformation via energized protodermis, as it is believed that only those who are destined are transformed, and all others are destroyed. To me, the link between destiny and transformation shows that a major component of destiny as a virtue is that it is a journey to become the best version of yourself. This is particularly true of Takua, for whom embracing destiny literally brought on his transformation. But even in other cases, we see that the pursuit of their destiny often forces the characters to change and to confront their flaws and become the best version of themselves, undergoing a personal transformation. There's a lot more to be said about the link between destiny and transformation, but that begins to dive deeper into the mechanics of how destiny works as a force in the Bionicle universe, so that will be covered in our video discussing destiny in depth. Even without the cosmic component, destiny is one of the most mysterious of the virtues, and the one that is the most open to interpretation. There are many different ways that destiny can be seen, particularly since we humans have a very wide variety of our own real-world views on the subject. There are some fans who question whether or not destiny should even be considered a virtue at all, as they view destiny more as something that happens to you, or the fate that was planned for you, rather than a moral to uphold. Even Greg Varsity has expressed this view at one point in the Chat with Greg dialogues, though it should be noted that he has also had statements on destiny that show a different view. With that in mind, I think it's important to remember that Greg was not the only writer for Bionicle, and that much of the story and themes were made by other people on the story team. Since there were different people creating it, there are going to be different interpretations to the story that they develop, meaning that Greg's interpretation, while important to consider, is not the end-all be-all of canon, and he himself has admitted that. And to this, I counter that destiny, at least how it is treated in the story and by the characters, is a virtue in that one's destiny is treated as a goal that they have to achieve, one that will benefit the whole universe. At no point in the story is a person's destiny something that is going to end up happening no matter what they choose. The characters have to strive and struggle and actively make the right choices in order for their destiny to be achieved. Their destiny happens because of their choices, and as such, destiny can be considered a virtue because they are encouraged to make choices that push them towards their destiny. To embody the virtue of destiny, the characters must find it, accept it, and work towards it. If we look at the principles that are derived from destiny, that may give us more insight into how the Matoran view destiny itself. I'll keep it brief here, since I'll give my more detailed thoughts on the 6 principles in that other video, but I feel that some of the discussion is relevant here, especially for destiny. Of the 6 principles, 3 of them are derived from destiny. The Matoran derive the principle of peace directly from destiny. The Matoran derive creation from unity and destiny, and the Matoran derive prosperity from duty and destiny. Prosperity from the Matoran is about working hard towards a goal, and creation from the Matoran is about bringing things together to make something great. So we see that for the Stone and Earth Matoran, they see destiny as actualizing goals and arriving at a desired state or destination. For the Matoran, they derive peace from destiny, peace being the acceptance and calm that comes with understanding one's place in the larger scheme of things. From this, we see the more mystical ideals of destiny being the path that all things must take, and that achieving a state of peace can bring knowledge of destiny and knowledge of Matanui's will. So between these, I think we can surmise that destiny is about purpose, goals to strive for, and attempting to better understand one's place in their universe. One thing that's also very notable about destiny is that destinies that we see and know of are almost never selfish, adding an additional moral layer to it. In a dialogue, Greg also suggests that destinies are usually meant to be a good, higher purpose. The context for this being that someone asked him if it would be someone's destiny to kill Makuta, and he said that destiny would usually be something nobler than just ending another being's life. That may happen in the process of achieving destiny, but that wouldn't be the destiny itself. One's destiny is almost always meant to be a positive contribution to the world around them, not just achieving something purely for personal gain. And so, while destiny often includes becoming the best version of themselves, it is not just for their own benefit, but for the larger world and community around them. What's also interesting about the different ways of viewing destiny is that it also manifests in the different characters' arcs and relationships to achieving their destiny. For in each case, we can break down their relationship to destiny by seeing how their arcs approach these 3 main questions. Do they know what their destiny is? Do they accept their destiny? And what are the journeys and trials they have to take to fulfill it? For the Toamata, they knew right from the start that their destiny was to reawaken the Great Spirit, and they readily accepted it. Their arc in relation to destiny was the most straightforward. They simply needed to find out how to awaken the Great Spirit and overcome the obstacles in their path to doing so. To them, destiny is a goal to strive for actively. They need to run towards it. On the other hand, Takua's arc in regards to destiny is primarily about accepting and embracing it. He very much did not want to be the herald of the Mask of Light, and throughout the movie is constantly trying to either run away from it or pass it on to Jaller. Now, how much he actually knew it was his destiny to become a Toa, and at what point he figured this out, is debatable. He definitely knew by the battle at Kininui, otherwise, why would he have immediately known to put on the mask at Jaller's dying words? I personally have a theory that I made an earlier video about, that he knew, or at least had a strong suspicion that he meant to be the Toa of Light, since the prophecy was first revealed by the Turaga at the Suva. It may have taken him a while to feel sure though, so his journey did have a component of finding out what destiny is. But the obstacles to him actually achieving his destiny were almost purely internal and psychological, as at literally any point in the movie he could have put on the mask. In embracing destiny, Takua is transformed into Takanuva, and becomes the Toa of Light that he was meant to be. In this way, destiny to him is a truth to accept passively, as he must learn to stop resisting and running from it. Finally, the Toa Metru and the Toa Inika both have their own, somewhat similar arcs in regards to destiny. In both cases, they were given their Toa power without actually being told what their destiny or mission was, so a significant portion of their arcs were about finding out what it is. It's not that they wouldn't go for their destiny once they found it out, but they literally didn't know what it would be. For them, destiny is something not only to accept and strive for, but a mystery to be discovered, as an active learning process. In fact, in both cases, they originally believed that their destiny was actually to rescue a different set of heroes, who would then take over and save the day. For the Toa Metru, they believed that they were meant to save Toa Likan, who they believed was the only one who could stop the false Turaga Duma. The Toa Inika were already on a mission to try and save the Toa Nuva while they were still Matoran, and for a while made that their primary mission before they were forced to come to the realization that they were the only ones left who could get the Mask of Life. So, in both cases, their journey of accepting their destinies was about learning to believe in themselves, and that they themselves could be heroes. Which, if you think about it, is a lot like Takua's. They had to learn that they couldn't put their destiny off onto somebody else that they think would be more reliable. They had to embrace that the task was theirs and face it for themselves. One thing that is sometimes said about the three virtues within the fandom is that duty and destiny are basically the same thing, because you can easily simplify them both to mean what you're meant to do. While I do see what they mean, and there is a lot of overlap between the ideas of duty and destiny, I feel like this is a very surface level take that really brushes past what they mean and how they're used thematically in the story. Duty is more focused on the mundane, day-to-day aspects of responsibility, working hard, and showing courage in the face of adversity. Destiny is much more mystical and is about the more grand goal that one works towards their entire life, and means becoming the best version of yourself. Again, these two ideas have close relationships with each other, but they're not the same. In fact, all the virtues have that kind of real overlap if you consider unity and duty the same way, given that one's duty is to others and their community. And I feel like the best example of the difference between duty and destiny is when we look at the Toa, because Toa's duties and destinies are very different. Many Toa teams across the story have completely different destinies from each other, whether to reawaken the Great Spirit or evacuate the Matoran, but on the other hand, all Toa shared the same fundamental duty, to protect the Matoran and keep the universe safe. Their destiny was always presented as a single distinct quest that a specific team had to accomplish. Duty, on the other hand, was ongoing and was distinct from their specific mission. It was something they were meant to do every day, and so is different from their destiny. But really, this similarity points to something important. The three virtues are deeply intertwined with each other, and in many ways need each other. They weren't separate values, but rather an interconnected set of ideals. Their unity is required to give them the strength they need to do their duty and their destiny. In turn, the fact that the members of a team share the same destiny and all Toa share the same duty was often what brought the Toa together in the first place, and so was the source of their unity. Their duty is to each other and their community, showing how duty and unity connect. And they also believe that they have an obligation to try and work towards their ultimate mission, showing the connection between duty and destiny. Now, another way that the virtues combine in very interesting ways is the 6 principles that I went over a little bit earlier. While all Matoran honored the 3 virtues, each village's culture led them to emphasize one or two more than the others. From the virtues they emphasized, they developed a principle that they also followed. As such, the principles offer an amazing insight into the culture of each village and how their themes of their element translate into their values. Now, let's take a step back and ask what the true purpose of the 3 virtues are, as they were given to the Matoran for very specific purposes. One view of the 3 virtues held by many in the fandom is that they were a programming directive from the Great Beings intended to make sure that the Matoran fulfilled their roles in the Great Spirit robot, and to make sure that all the parts of the machine worked together. Work together, do your job, fulfill your purpose. These directives make sense as things to give the worker drones that kept their ultimate creation running smoothly. But then, after the Matoran began to awaken their sentience, these directives gained new meaning to them. They became a moral framework to live by, a creed gifted to them by their guardian deity. In this way, it's another example of what I feel is one of the most poignant themes in Bionicle. That these were robots who were never intended to be anything more, but they did become more. They evolved into a people of their own, but didn't reject their robotic origins, but found deeper personal meaning in them than was originally intended. Though, perhaps this may have been a case where the Great Beings themselves did see the more profound meanings in these virtues. While stranded on Barra Magna, Motunui eventually found the fortress of the Great Beings, and was forced to answer a riddle to enter. The riddle asked, "What do you seek? What is your burden? What brings you life and death?" And the answers to the riddles were unity, duty, and destiny. I feel this riddle may give us insight into how the Great Beings saw the 3 virtues. In particular, I find the riddle for unity very interesting. The riddles for duty and destiny are very in line with established ideas for those. Duty is a burden one must take, and destiny shapes the course of one's life. But in this riddle, unity is what one seeks. This is interesting because it frames unity as a goal in and of itself, rather than just being a means to accomplish another goal. This is actually foreshadowing to what the true purpose of Motunui was. His mission was to reunite the planet of Spherus Magna from the 3 planets it had become. This connection between the 3 virtues and Motunui's mission goes deep, as the very symbol that has come to represent the 3 virtues is actually the shape of Spherus Magna after the shattering. The big center dot being the large planet of Barra Magna, and the 2 smaller dots being the moons of Aqua Magna and Boda Magna, and the curved lines around it being the clouds of dust and gas that have come to encircle the planets. It is said that the symbol was to serve as a reminder to Motunui himself. And so we see that the reformation of Spherus Magna is the ultimate fulfillment of unity, duty, and destiny. This layered meaning is in keeping with the trend the Great Beings had of inserting real deeper meanings to their creations, but the meanings were intended to be understood among themselves, and they never realized that the Matoran were going to see those meanings. Much like how Motunui was named the Great Spirit, not because he was meant to be the god of the Matoran universe, but because they hoped he would carry the Great Spirit of the Great Being's homeworld of Spherus Magna. These varied layers of meaning are an aspect to the story that I really enjoy. And to go on a small tangent, the out-of-universe look at the meaning behind the symbol of the 3 virtues is also fascinating. The symbol had been a part of the main Bionicle logo from the beginning, though, as I said, it didn't actually come to represent the 3 virtues until 2003, because the idea of the 3 virtues came later. And that's not even to mention how the idea of Spherus Magna and the 3 worlds wasn't even conceived until much, much later. But they managed to retroactively fit in that significance in a very creative way later in the story. Christian Faber, one of the co-creators and original concept artists of the Bionicle brand, actually shed light on the origins of the symbol in his blog Faber Files. Originally, it was an abstract drawing of a B and a 4, B4 being one of the many prototype names for the series. Later on, after the name was settled on Bionicle, Faber took the shape made by the B and made a yin-yang inspired symbol of it, resulting in the symbol that we know today, with the curves on either side being B's for Bionicle. The inspiration for it being the yin-yang symbol is also very fitting, as it was already a symbol meant to denote the ideas of virtues and harmony. Diving back in-universe, we've explored how the Matoran and the Grey Beings see the three virtues, but what about other beings? The three virtues are most often associated with Matoran culture, but how species other than the Matoran and Toa view the three virtues is a bit ambiguous, as we rarely got the same deeper looks into their cultures. We know that they at least know about them, and it is also implied that faith in the three virtues and in Matanui was a major recruitment requirement to the Order of Matanui, which, besides a few notable exceptions, was exclusively composed of non-Matoran and Toa. It would make sense that other species would still come to honor the three virtues, since they were also a part of the Great Spirit's body, though they may not have held them as strongly since the Matoran were considered the most vital, and thought of as Matanui's chosen people. One way we see the virtues thought about outside the heroic ideals of the Toa is in how Bionicle represents its villains, who are almost always in some way or another working against the virtues. While the heroes try to live by the three virtues, the villains are almost always shown to be lacking in them. They always embody some kind of selflessness or higher ideal, and the villains of Bionicle are so often characterized by their extreme selfishness and belief that they have the right to take for themselves at the expense of everyone around them. The villains, particularly the sentient ones, almost never have true unity, for example. They almost never care about each other and usually will bicker, fight, and betray each other at the slightest provocation. The best example of how villains don't live up to the three virtues would have to be the Paraka. As I discussed in an earlier video, they were written to be the complete antithesis of the heroic Toa. Hakan infamously built a temple to the three most important things in his life, and when Garan asked if he meant the three virtues, Hakan laughed and said, "No, me, myself, and I." Their lack of unity was particularly notable, as not only did they constantly bicker, they actively fought and betrayed each other on numerous times, often costing them victories. Each of the Paraka had plans to betray the others as soon as the mask was theirs, and they were practically open about this to each other. Their lack of duty was also apparent, as they despised concepts like honor and saw no obligation to anything other than themselves. And as far as destiny, they can be said to be working against destiny because instead of having a grand goal to change the world for the better, as most destinies are, the grand goal they were working towards is just petty power for themselves. They seek to change the world, but only for the worse, and against the natural order of things. There are some villains who, rather than fully rejecting the virtues, can actually be argued to be living by an extremely corrupted version of them. In particular, the Visorak, Borak, and Vaki can each to an extent be considered to be embodying a corrupted version of unity and duty. These swarm and horde type villains that were popular from 2002 to 2005 were all essentially armies of drones. They worked together and did exactly what they were told, but they did it because they were either mindless robots like the Borak and the Vaki, or out of tyrannical fear of their leaders like the Visorak. This is in contrast to the conscious and willing ideals of unity and duty that the heroes embodied, because they chose to, and because they were actively caring about each other, their people, and their world. Makuta, the main big bad of the series, is often seen as the biggest threat against the virtues. Not only did he reject them, he actively sought to corrupt the Matoran and Toa to get them to turn away from the virtues. He wanted to make the Toa turn away from each other and to keep the Matoran villages separate. He wanted them to be too selfish or afraid to pursue their duty or destiny. The Rakshi in particular each embodied the opposite of one of the principles derived from the virtues, with their powers meant to destroy the Matoran's faith in the virtues given to them by Matanui. Now, another interesting tidbit about Makuda's thoughts on the three virtues is that Makuta Pterodax says that he doesn't believe in unity or duty, but that he does believe in destiny. So he doesn't care for other people or his obligations to them, but he does believe in a grand goal to achieve for himself, his eventual takeover of the Matoran universe. Perhaps then Makuta is what happens when you have destiny devoid of unity or duty. Without those other two to balance it out, the virtues become corrupt. One thing that's interesting is that in an illusion created by Makuta Pterodax of Metronui, we can see a world where the three virtues are put in this negative light. The Matoran must live in conformity and must work their jobs tirelessly, much like how the Borak and Vaki and Vizorak embody unity and duty. So perhaps this is what Makuta seeks: a grand destiny for himself, and a corrupted version of unity and duty for everyone else. Now, looking into the various debates, interpretations, and discussions of the three virtues within the fandom, one interpretation that I think is of note would be the least generous interpretation, which is basically that they are the corrupted versions that I mentioned. That unity is conformity, duty is blind obedience, and destiny is being trapped by fate. And you can see that the common thread here is the idea that the three virtues promote a lack of individuality and free will, and place too much value on going along with what society tells you. I can definitely see where some fans get these interpretations, especially given the fact that the Matoran were designed to be worker robots, and you could see how these ideas could be interpreted as a means to control them and keep them working without question. And in many ways, this interpretation does hold water. I mean, the Matoran were meant to just work on maintaining the robot and fulfill their purpose, with the intent of them being either discarded or studied after Matsunui's mission was complete. They were never intended to be people, and so the values given to them would reflect that. And the whole situation with the Vaki on Metronui certainly doesn't help the more dystopian aspects of Matoran life. Now, particularly since duty and destiny are both, from a certain point of view, about Matoran fulfilling their roles as parts of the machine, I have seen some interpretations that only by freeing themselves from the virtues will they ever truly free themselves from being just machines and actually become true people. Which I must admit is a very interesting notion, that they're in this halfway point between being drones and full people, and discussing what it might take for them to fully emerge as a people of their own. But I also believe that if we look at how the virtues really play out in the story, that this isn't the case, and moreover that the three virtues actually do promote very healthy ideas of self in addition to helping one's community. First is that in the story, unity very much does not imply conformity or lack of uniqueness. Quite the opposite, actually. Unity is about having people who are very different come together under a common cause. It's very clear in the text that unity necessarily implies diversity. It is the fact that the Toa are so different from each other, both in powers, but even more crucially in the ways that they think, that when they work together they can complement each other's strengths and covers for each other's weaknesses. Their differences are not to be overlooked or suppressed, but to be celebrated. In addition, we see how unity doesn't just mean going along with what others say when we look at how it relates to the trope of leadership. Both Tahu and Vakama were framed by the narrative as failing at unity when they refused to listen to the input of their teammates. Just bossing each other around wasn't unity. It's not enough for everyone to be working together and doing what someone says. Unity is about truly bringing everyone's ideas and perspectives to the table. This distinction is most notable when Vakama describes this approach to unity as the difference between leadership and tyranny. We also see that duty does not actually mean blind subservience to authority, and this is proven by Jalar. Jalar is the character who embodies the virtue of duty the most, as he was quite literally used it to invoke it during the final scene of Mask of Light. And Jalar, particularly as a Matoran, was perhaps the least afraid to speak out when authority figures were in the wrong. And he was motivated to do this out of duty, not in opposition to it. When he saw Tahu acting brashly, or the Turaga keeping important secrets from the Matoran, he believed that they were not fulfilling their duty, and so he did not hesitate to call them out on it. It's frankly a very interesting take on a character who is motivated by duty, as often these character archetypes go through an arc about the conflict between their sense of duty and obligation to authority, as opposed to what they think is right. But with Jollar, those are one and the same, and he is ready and willing to defy any authority figure if he feels that they are not acting out of their own duty. Now, destiny as submission to fate is interesting because it isn't really cut and dry, like everything involving destiny. However, I feel that at least how the Toa and Matoran talk about destiny as a virtue, they see it as higher goals to strive for. For example, regardless of whether or not destiny is actually inevitable, the characters always seem to act and behave like it is not. Rather, that it is a goal that they have to work towards, one that they can fail at, and that finding and striving towards their destiny is virtuous. Their destiny is something that they want to achieve because it is for the good. At the end of the movie Web of Shadows, Vakama, as the narrator, says, "It was in those days I discovered that our destinies were not written in stone. We have to find them for ourselves." To me, this tells me that Vakama, who becomes one of the main teachers of the virtues as a Turaga, views destiny as an active journey of self-discovery, rather than submission to a cosmic plan that you have no part in. In addition, while their destiny is their great life goal that they are assigned and are meant to work towards, they are allowed to pursue other things. They can have many other adventures and fulfilling aspects of their life outside of or even after their destiny. So, it may be that these virtues were originally given to them as a means to keep them working for their assigned purpose and even deny them individuality. But if they were, it's clear that these virtues evolved with the Matoran to embody much higher and nobler ideals, ones that promote uniqueness, strength of will, and self-actualization. In addition, we can see that for the Matoran and Toa, the three virtues have already transcended their significance as being directives for the machine, as ultimately they weren't following them for the great beings, or the mission to restore Spheres Magna. They were doing them for themselves and for each other. Unity was about supporting each other as a community. Duty was their obligation to each other, and they believed destiny was about setting their world right. They were motivated to do these things by their loyalty to Matanui, not as parts of the machine, but because he was their guardian deity who kept their world in balance. He had personal significance to them. By helping him, they were creating a world where their people could flourish. So if we look at it from this angle, they don't need to abandon the virtues to become their own people. Rather, they themselves became people by recontextualizing the virtues to serve them. Nick on Planet Ripple's fan comic, The Toa, actually has a really interesting discussion of the three virtues in dialogue between Tahu and Takua on pages 20 through 23. They essentially have the fandom debate between the positive and negative interpretations of the virtues between them in the dialogue, with Tahu believing they could be used to trick people, while Takua pointing out that they were meant to be interpreted thoughtfully, and that ultimately they were about coming together and trying your hardest to make the world a better place. Also, while I'm talking about it, definitely go check out The Toa on DeviantArt. It is an incredibly heartfelt and imaginative retelling of the BIONICLE story that, while very familiar, has plenty of its own unique twists and is one of my personal favorite fanfics. Another way of looking at the virtues is not just as the morals and ideals of the characters within the story, but also as life lessons that LEGO as a company wanted to impart on its audience. I think that this may very well be the case, as the three virtues are pretty on brand for the kinds of life lessons that LEGO has pushed in its more story-centric stories. Particularly unity. Working together and collaborative play are cornerstones of LEGO's brand as a children's toy company. In the LEGO Movie, learning to work together and combine their individual creativities was a major lesson that the master builders had to learn. Bringing things together to strive for something great, which is the essence of unity and destiny, is at the core of LEGO. Add in themes of responsibility and diligence to get duty, and you've got a moral system that is very in keeping with LEGO's identity, and the kinds of lessons they would want kids to learn. And whether or not everyone agrees on interpretations of the three virtues, I think we can all agree that they add richness to the world and the fictional culture in Bionicle. Something unique pointed out to me by Kirika is that the three virtues adds a very interesting, almost religious angle to the belief systems of the characters. In many ways, they are a very simplified version of religious virtues. But given that this is a kids series, that simplification is appropriate, much like how the Force in Star Wars is also a deliberately simplified version of religion. In many fictional settings, the fictional religion is mainly defined by creation myths, pantheons, and the occasional prophecy foreshadowing events, but much more rarely do they actually dive into how those belief systems affect the people in their daily lives. The actual function of religion. And it's even rarer for it to be explicitly shown how different segments of the culture incorporate the same value system in different ways, or how each individual tries to live up to these creeds in their own way that isn't a binary right and wrong. Many times, fictional religions will have mostly everyone in the fictional society hold the same beliefs and interpretations of the morals, and occasionally have a few outcasts who don't fit in with it. But Bionicle has the three virtues, which the characters tried to live up by day to day. And each character had their own approach to living up to them. Just another way Bionicle really went the extra mile in making its world feel lived in. What makes them so interesting to me is that they are a moral creed that does also connect to the cosmology of the setting in a way that makes sense and shows how the characters react to and view their unique world, which is just good world building. After all, the three virtues do ultimately tie back to the reveal that the world the characters live in is a giant mechanical body, and that these beliefs originated from their directives to work together and keep the world functioning, but that they eventually became something more. Oh, I must add that, officially speaking, the three virtues and the Great Spirit were not religious views, as LEGO very much did not want to make explicit religious references in order to ensure that they didn't upset any children or parents that might feel uneasy about that being discussed in a LEGO toy. However, if we look at it from purely a world-building perspective, we can't deny that these pieces of the world do fit in the role of religion to these fictional people. And the world of Bionicle is all the more rich because of it. This has been my look at the three virtues of Bionicle. Three simple little words that had surprising depths and meaning to them in the story. Honestly, I really enjoyed making this deep dive, as it was one of the areas where it really has a lot of depth to parse out, and shows just how interesting Bionicle can be from a literary analysis point of view. And let's continue this discussion in the comments. Let me know your thoughts and interpretations of the virtues, and how they were handled by the story. Do you agree with my takes, or do you have different opinions? A lot of this discussion was started on a post I made on Tumblr, which many other fans contributed to and gave interesting takes on the virtues. I'll link to it in the description, since it's got a lot of interesting points. Check it out if you want to. And be sure to tune in next time, where I dive into the 6 principles and what they tell us about Matoran culture. And then the time after that, where I dive into the mysticism of destiny, how it works, and the debate as to whether or not there is free will in the Bionicle story. Until then, I'll see you guys soon. Take care, my gathered friends.